The amount of electricity that solar panels produce is constantly changing for many reasons, such as the angle of the sun hitting the solar panels throughout the day or time of year, lots of weather factors, length of the day, etc. There's also a small incremental amount of solar panel degradation, typically somewhere in the order of 0.5% per year. Now that we're into 2024, I can review how my rooftop solar and RV solar panels produced in 2023 and compare it to prior years, fully expecting continued variance. Our rooftop solar panels have now been operating for 6.5 years, and as of December 31st, 2023, they have now produced 91,886 kilowatt hours at 10.95 cents per kilowatt hour, which is about the average retail cost for electricity in my area. That's $10,061 worth of electricity over 2,330 full days of energy production. They have now produced more value in electricity than they cost to install, and I'll put a card above to the video I published when we broke even on the installation costs. In 2023 alone, the solar production was 15,330 kilowatt hours, which is worth $1,679 of electricity in our area. The other important point regarding the total solar generation is our rooftop solar panels have zero shading at any time, whereas our RV solar panels do have early morning and late afternoon shade. In 2022, I used some of the RV solar production to cool the trailer in the summer or heat it in the winter to maintain the RV batteries at a middle temperature, which I documented in this video, which I'll put a card to above. Upon further research on the temperature range the battery manufacturer says is fine, I decided to let the batteries get up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, which is still good, 20 degrees less than the manufacturer's maximum, and down to 32 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, which is 8 degrees warmer than the manufacturer's minimum, where the BMS will shut the batteries off. Surprisingly, I never needed to use the mini split for the batteries at any time in 2023. The batteries never exceeded that temperature range. Their significant thermal mass helps to normalize their temperature, and the ambient temperature highs and lows are further buffered by the trailer that the batteries are in. One thing that helps keep the batteries cooler in the summer is during the peak energy production in the middle of the day, I was often able to send the energy to the Tesla instead of the RV battery bank, since charging batteries heats them up. One record that we broke in 2023 was our grid-tied solar net metering balance. Here's a list of the peak net metering balances each year, which increased in 2019 due to a solar array expansion, then increased again in 2022 due to the additional energy from the trailer, which went into the Tesla and reduced the demand on the house. 2023 just barely edged out the 2022 peak for no particular reason I can think of. Our 2.65 kilowatt of RV solar panels have now been operating for 2 full years, and over that time they've produced 6,309 kilowatt hours of electricity, valued at $691. The majority of which has been used to power our Tesla Model S, which I explained in this video, which I'll put a card to above. I try to keep the RV batteries less than 100% so that the solar panels can produce as much electricity as possible, and in 2022 there were 64 times that the RV batteries got to 100%. But the majority of those, it was only at 100% very briefly, unless it happened while we were camping, which was 31 of those times. I documented all of the details of the first year of RV solar production in this video, which I'll put a card to above. In 2023, there were 31 days where the RV battery got to 100%, and 19 of those days were while we were camping, so we had nowhere to send excess electricity. In 2023, we took the RV on 5 different trips, totaling 28 days. Going forward in 2024, it'll be easier to keep the RV battery from fully charging when it's at home because we purchased a Tesla Model Y, the story of which I will link to in the card above. In having 2 Teslas to send energy to, more than likely there will be one at home that the RV can then be discharged into. In 2023, the RV solar panels produced 3,139 kilowatt hours. Over the 28 days we were camping in the trailer in 2023, the RV's solar panels produced 324 kilowatt hours of electricity. That means that the RV's solar panels produced 2,815 kilowatt hours of electricity while the trailer was sitting in our driveway. That means that 88.5% of the RV's produced electricity was while it was sitting in the driveway. If our Teslas consume 300 watt hours per mile on average, That 2,815 kilowatt hours could power our EVs for 9,383 miles. However, there are efficiency losses and some minimal DC energy consumption in the trailer. So if we look directly at the AC consumption of 2,492 kilowatt hours, that would be 8,306 miles of range at 300 watt hours per mile, which is still a very useful amount of energy. Charging EVs directly most days has helped to reduce the cycle count on the RV battery bank. The 9.6 kilowatt hours of RV batteries has supplied 963 kilowatt hours of electricity, which means the batteries have been cycled about 100 times in that 1 year. Battleborn estimates they'll last 3,000 to 5,000 cycles, so at this rate they'll last 30 to 50 years. However, there's a pretty large discrepancy on the input side from solar, showing 1,610 kilowatt hours to the battery from solar, and I'm not sure how to attribute that much discrepancy. Sure, there are efficiency losses and some direct DC energy consumption, but that's a big discrepancy. So I'd love to hear in the comments below what you think the big difference is due to. At that solar charging rate, though, we cycled the batteries 168 times this year, which results in 17.8 to 29.8 years instead. In short, I'm very pleased with our solar production and how much money having solar has saved us and how useful it's been to us. I'm now going to take you into the Solar Edge monitoring portal to show you the energy production graphs from our grid-tied housetop solar array. Then I'll take you into the Victron monitoring portal to show you the produced energy from the RV solar panels. If we look over here at the dashboard, we can see that I have the time frame selected here, and so this graph does apply to that time frame, and you can see this is exactly all of 2023. So the production for 2023 was 15.33 megawatt hours, which is 15,330 kilowatt hours. And if you look over here and start at the beginning of this graph, this is now each month. And you can see that in January we got 514 kilowatt hours, and then that continued to climb. And I'll just kind of move across here so you can see those numbers. And the peak that we got was in July this year at 1.76 megawatt hours. Sometimes it peaks in May. And then August it starts to climb back down. And usually October is the last really good producing month, and that's generally because the ambient temperatures are cooling down, but the days are still relatively sunny and long, but then November it drops down as the weather really declines. If we look down here at the comparative energy graphs, we can see what last year looked like compared to the years prior. So if you look over here at the legend, we can see 2023 is the kind of red color there. And so if we jump over here, this right here would be 2023 in January, and you can see it was really kind of low, frankly. If you look across this line, you can see all of the prior years were more than that. This one down here doesn't count because that's 2024 and that's just barely begun. And comparing this to 2022, for instance, look at that huge amount of variance. Like, we're talking double in 2022. So I don't know what to make of that. 514 versus 1.1 megawatt hours. So that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this video, where the amount of solar production varies pretty dramatically based on mostly weather. If we move along, look over here, we can see 2023 is now much more equivalent to 2022, but still lower. And also over here, 2020 was 1.19, and looks like it was identical in 2022 versus 2020. And then moving over here, we've got March, still lower. And finally, over in April, it's much closer to being equal to the 3 prior years, but it's still the lowest of them. Now, I should mention there's obviously you have 2018 and 2019 here, and those are significantly lower. That's because the solar array was 6.38 kilowatts at that time, and then I added additional solar panels to get it up to 9.98 kilowatts, and I did that in 2019. And so that's why you're seeing that big discrepancy there. And I actually did it around July of 2019. So after this, you can see the purple line jumps up and it matches better with the other years. So coming back here to May, though, we can see in June that it's still lower. July is finally the first year where in 2023 it produced more than 2022, and actually more than 2021 as well, but it still didn't beat out 2020. And then if we continue over here, it's 1.58, so just a tiny bit less, and then still a little bit less, still a little bit less, still a little bit less. Interestingly, I don't know why, but finally in December 2023 came through, and beat out all of the prior years. So I guess we just had an extra sunny December where it didn't snow a lot, which definitely was the case. And I would generally attribute the rest of this not only to weather, but just simply that the panels are now 6.5 years old. And like I said, there's a little bit of performance degradation of the solar panels just as the UV rays degrade the materials and they lose about 0.5% of performance per year, which now, after 6.5 years, is adding up to a couple of percent, and that is probably being reflected here. Now, if we jump up here to quarters, you're going to be seeing basically the same type of information, just broken down by quarter, of course, and you have that comparative information across here. I'm not going to dwell on this. I don't think that's a particularly interesting way to slice the data. And then we can jump over here to years, and we can just see each of the cumulative years compared to each other. And so 2023 is down here, and all of the 3 prior years, as we saw in the comparative months, were higher. And then here, 2019, 2018, 2017, we can just pretty much ignore that. 2017, the system went online August 14th of 2017, so that's a partial year, and that's kind of a throwaway piece of data there. So I hope this is interesting, seeing the rooftop solar array and just the high-level stats for 2023. Let's move over now to the Victron monitoring portal. So this is showing the electrical output of 2023 from our RV's rooftop solar panels. And so let me just explain briefly what you're seeing here, because there's several different things. Down here in the legend, you can see that consumption is the red bars, the solar production is the orange bars, and then the battery is the blue line. So that's this trend line right here. Now, because we're looking at the full year, what you're seeing here is the averages, right? Now, this blue shaded area, because we're showing the whole year at once, is actually showing you the extremes for the whole month aggregated. So for instance, here in March, the battery never got higher than 98%, but here in February, the battery did get to 100% at some point during that month. And over here in November, it never exceeded 91%, for instance. So this blue shaded area just shows the state of charge and what it got to at some point during that month. And so as we move along here, it's kind of interesting to see the average state of charge of the RV battery throughout the year. So starting in January, the average was 80%. And that's partially just because I was sometimes going for multiple days and letting the battery charge up, because there's so minimal energy production that it's really not worth the effort turning it on and plugging it into the car every day. And so I would just let it charge up for a few days, and so the average state of charge would get up fairly full and before I would plug it into the car to then discharge it down low. I'm frankly surprised that 80% is the average, because I feel like it would probably be closer to 50%, but that's what it shows. And then the next month it is showing more like 67%, and then also 55% dropping down. Now, when we start getting into the summer months, like April is actually producing quite a bit of energy by that point, April, May, June, July, August, etc. The amount of solar production in one day can exceed my battery bank's storage capacity by double, meaning I've seen the RV produce up to 20 kilowatt hours in one day. Now, that being said, where it is parked next to my house, the most I've seen in one day is 18 kilowatt hours, because there's a little bit of shading in the morning and in the late afternoon. But if we're out camping in a perfectly sunny location right at the summer solstice, which is right here in June, it can produce 20 kilowatt hours in a day, whereas our storage capacity is basically 10 kilowatt hours, or half of that. So for that reason, I try to keep the state of charge of the RV battery fairly low during the summer, because if we unplug our Tesla and go somewhere, all of that solar energy is going into the battery bank, which will then fully charge pretty quickly, and then we will lose out on solar energy because our trailer is off grid. It's not connected to anything. If we're not actually discharging it actively, then it's just going to fill up. And I want the solar panels to produce as much as they're capable of at all times. So that's why I keep it low, just to give myself more buffer of time before it will fully charge, and we can come back and plug the car in. And now that we have 2 Teslas, I'll probably let this be higher in the summer, because it's more likely that we'll have a car available to have it be plugged in and taking that energy if the other one is gone. So this kind of bounces around throughout the summer, and part of the reasoning for the July being higher, I suspect, is because we were camping a lot that month, and when we're camping, our gas truck can't take any of the excess electricity. I would love to have a Cybertruck or some other electric truck someday, but we don't have that yet. So the battery tends to fill up pretty much every day when we're camping, sometimes quite early in the day, and then so that would mean the average state of charge is higher that month. And this month over here, we were also camping for a chunk of that month as well. And so that's the average, and then it goes back up at the end of the year. Now, if we look at the overall consumption versus solar production, you can see they stay pretty well paired up throughout the year, and that's simply because we try to consume as much as the trailer's capable of producing. Now, there are some discrepancies here, and I'm not going to claim to know exactly why that is. You'll see the production is always higher than the consumption. Is that discrepancy simply the discrepancy of energy efficiency, meaning that you have energy coming in from solar panels, and then when it gets stored in the battery and then gets inverted through the inverters and goes back out, that there are efficiency losses? I tend to think that is what's going on here. You'll see that every single month the solar is higher than the consumption, and that's the efficiency losses. And then down here total, we can see the total consumption of 24.92 kilowatt hours throughout the year, and the solar production of 39 kilowatt hours. And so that also reflects the difference in these columns. Now, if we switch over here to consumption only, we can get additional insights about that consumption. Although there's really not that much to look at here, there's just the two things from the battery versus from solar. So obviously what this indicates is how much energy went into the batteries of the RV first and then got withdrawn versus how much came from the solar panels and went directly out to, in our case, charging the Tesla. I try to charge the Teslas as much as I can while the sun is shining to bypass the RV's battery, partially to reduce the heat buildup and then also just to reduce the cycling on those batteries that's in the RV. So that's where here in the summer months, the days are really long and there's plenty of time for the solar to go directly into the Tesla's batteries and bypass the RV batteries. That's why the orange is taller, because that's directly from solar, as it shows down here. Whereas in the winter months, you'll see it's, well, a lot less production in general, and that's just reflected in the shorter days of the year, plus there's snow and things like that. But like over here in December, we're much closer to almost 50-50, and that's because, like I said, some days I'll go for multiple days of letting the RV batteries just slowly charge up each day if there's a lot of cloudy weather or snow or whatnot. And so there's not as much energy going directly into the Tesla in that case. So down here we have from the battery 963 kilowatt hours, from solar 1529, and the consumption total is 2492. So let's jump over here to solar. And so what we're seeing here is how much of the solar is going directly to the batteries versus directly used. So this is kind of the same graph, frankly. They're just looking at it from the solar's perspective, and I don't find a big use for this, but I thought I'd show it since it's a graph, that's a tab in their graphs. So then we can go down here to grid, and there's absolutely nothing to show for it because we've never plugged our trailer into any external energy source since my initial testing in early January, maybe February of 2022. So this being 2023, zero connection to the grid, so no data to show there. The Victron monitoring portal will go down into daily granularity, as you can see on this graph here, and I will go into these graphs in more detail, at least specifically on the days that we are camping, that I have videos about. And once I edit those videos, I'll be inserting these energy graphs to show what the energy looked like throughout the day as we were living in the trailer, and you can see the activities of the day and what that looked like from an energy perspective. So stay tuned for those future videos. I hope this information has been helpful to you in your own solar journey, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post those in the comments below to share with everyone else, and I'll do the best that I can to answer the questions that I know the answers to. If you're working on building out your own solar array, I highly recommend Continuous Resources, where I got consulting help when I was designing my RV solar system, and you can also purchase equipment directly through them. If you use my referral code, you'll get discounts which depend on the equipment being purchased and the current promotion that is going on at that time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.